The will was already burning when they found me. Orange flames licked at the edges of the thick parchment while I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, watching $20 million worth of inheritance turn to ash. The smoke detector hadn't gone off yet. I'd removed the batteries an hour ago. The only sound was the crackling of paper and my stepmother Victoria's horrified shriek from the doorway. "Helena, what have you done?" I looked up at her with a smile that felt foreign on my face. "Good morning, Victoria. I'm feeling much better today." Her perfectly made-up face had gone white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Behind her, I could see the others rushing up the stairs. Uncle Richard's heavy footsteps, Aunt Margaret's sharp heels clicking on hardwood, and Cousin James taking the steps 3 at a time. "The will," Victoria whispered, staring at the flames. That's your father's will." "Yes, it is." I picked up the metal wastebasket and gently blew on the embers, making them glow brighter. "Though I suppose it was everyone's will, wasn't it? You all seemed very interested in what Daddy left behind." James burst into the room, his handsome face twisted with panic. "Helena, stop! You don't understand what you're doing." I laughed, actually laughed, and the sound made them all freeze. "Oh, but I do understand, James. I understand perfectly. Would you like me to explain?" Margaret pushed past the others, her sharp grey eyes fixed on the burning remains. "You stupid girl, do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" "A forgery." I stood up, brushing ash from my hands. "A very clever forgery, but a fake nonetheless. Tell me, Margaret, how long did it take you to recreate Daddy's handwriting?" "Weeks, months." The colour drained from her face. Richard stepped forward, his bulk filling the doorway. "Helena, you're clearly confused. You've been very sick." "Poisoned," I corrected pleasantly. "The word you're looking for is poisoned. Slow-acting digitalis in my morning water, if I'm not mistaken, causes heart palpitations, confusion, weakness. Very clever, very hard to detect. Dr. Hammond was in on it, wasn't he?" The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria's hands were shaking now, her confident mask cracking. You're imagining things. The stress of your father's death? The stress of dying, you mean?" I walked to my dresser and pulled out a small recording device. "Did you know people can hear everything right up until the end, even when they can't move or speak?" James's face had gone ashen. "What is that?" "Insurance." I pressed play, and my own voice filled the room, weak, gasping, but unmistakably present. Why are you doing this?" Then, Margaret's voice cold and clear. "Because we deserve it more than you do, darling. Your father was always too soft on you." "The trust documents are ready," James's recorded voice continued. "Once she's gone, everything transfers automatically. No one will question it." "What about the real will?" Victoria's voice asked. "What, real will?" Margaret laughed. "There is no real will anymore. I burned it last week." I clicked off the recording and smiled at their horrified faces. "Funny thing about that, Margaret. You burned a copy. The real will was in Daddy's safe, the combination to which he whispered to me on his deathbed. Not his birthday, not Mama's birthday, but the date he first suspected you were all lying to him." Richard was backing toward the door now, sweat pouring down his face. "This is impossible. You died. We all saw..." "You saw what you wanted to see." I sat back down on the floor, my legs folding under me with practiced ease. "But here's what you didn't see coming. The real will wasn't what you thought it was." "What do you mean?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I gestured to the burning papers in the wastebasket. "The will you just watched me burn. It left everything to me just like you all feared. 20 million in assets, the properties, the business holdings, all of it." James stepped forward, hope flickering in his eyes. Then why would you destroy it? Without the will, everything goes to the state. Unless there's a more recent will, I interrupted. One that supersedes the burned document. One that was filed with lawyers 3 days before Daddy's death. The hope died in James's eyes. Margaret's hand flew to her throat. That's impossible. Is it? I pulled a folded document from my pocket. Daddy was suspicious of you all for months before he died. So he wrote a new will, one you never knew about. Want to guess what it says? Victoria was shaking her head frantically. This isn't real. You're having a breakdown. It leaves everything to charity, I said softly, watching their faces crumble. Every single penny. The children's hospital, the homeless shelter, the animal rescue. Daddy was very specific about it. He said if anything happened to him under suspicious circumstances, he wanted to make sure his money went to people who would actually help others instead of destroying them. Richard's knees buckled. He grabbed the door frame for support. $20 million. Gone. I smiled sweetly. Along with your house, Richard. Did you forget? You took out a second mortgage last year to pay for James's gambling debts. The house you're living in? It was collateral against Daddy's estate. When the inheritance goes to charity instead of the family, the bank will want their money back. Margaret was staring at me like I was a ghost. How do you know about the gambling debts, the second mortgages, the business loans you all took out, assuming you'd inherit enough to pay them back? I shrugged. Daddy knew everything. He hired private investigators months ago. Did you think he'd really trust his fortune to people who were already spending money they hadn't inherited yet? Victoria collapsed onto my bed, her face buried in her hands. We're ruined. Not yet, I said cheerfully. But you will be. The debt collectors should arrive around noon. I called them this morning to let them know the estate situation had changed. They were very interested to hear that the collateral they'd been promised no longer existed. James was backing away from me now, his face pale with terror. You're insane. This is impossible. You died. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the black cars pulling into our driveway. Speaking of which, here comes the FBI. Turns out, when you file suspicious death reports with evidence of poisoning, they take it very seriously, especially when the victim miraculously recovers and has recordings of the whole conspiracy. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the house. Victoria's head snapped up. FBI? Insurance fraud? Conspiracy to commit murder? Forgery of legal documents? I counted off on my fingers. Oh, and Margaret? That digitalis you've been using? It's a controlled substance. Possession with intent to harm, carries a mandatory minimum sentence. The doorbell rang downstairs. Heavy footsteps echoed through the house as federal agents entered. I could hear them identifying themselves, asking for the residents to remain calm and cooperate. Margaret was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Please, Helena, we're family. I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the taste of bitter almonds, the burning in my chest, the helpless terror of dying alone while the people I trusted most celebrated my death. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't poison each other for money. Family doesn't forge wills and plan murders. You're just strangers who happen to marry into my life. The agents were climbing the stairs now. I could hear them calling out names, reading rights, the click of handcuffs. I sat back down on the floor and watched the last of the fake will turn to ash. Agent Morrison, I called out as a tall woman in a dark suit appeared in my doorway. Perfect timing. They're all here. 3 hours later, I sat in the FBI field office, watching Agent Morrison pour coffee into 2 paper cups. My statement was complete. The recording device had been logged as evidence, and somewhere down the hall, my family was discovering that federal holding cells were significantly less comfortable than our mansion. You realise how impossible this sounds, Agent Morrison said, settling across from me. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. The recording, the knowledge of their financial situations, the timing of everything. I sipped the bitter coffee and smiled. Impossible things happen every day, Agent Morrison. People win lotteries, cancer patients recover spontaneously, dead girls come back to life. Her eyebrow arched. Is that what you're claiming happened? I'm claiming nothing except what I can prove. I gestured toward the evidence bags on her desk. The recording speaks for itself. The financial documents show their desperation. The medical examiner's report will confirm digitalis poisoning. Speaking of which, Agent Morrison opened a file. We need to discuss Dr. Hammond. My pulse quickened. Hammond had been the linchpin in their plan, the respected physician who'd provided false diagnoses, and would have signed my death certificate. What about him? He's missing. Disappeared sometime early this morning, before our warrant was issued. Her eyes fixed on mine. Any idea where he might have gone? I set down my coffee cup, letting my surprise show. This was new. In my first life, Hammond had stayed until the end, confident in their plan. His running meant something had spooked him. No idea, I said truthfully, but he's been taking bribes from Uncle Richard for years. Maybe he panicked when he realised you were investigating. We found evidence of that in his office. Altered medical records, false prescriptions, payments traced back to your uncle's accounts. Agent Morrison leaned forward. The question is how you knew to look for it. I met her gaze steadily. My father suspected something was wrong months before he died. He hired private investigators to look into everyone around us. The reports were in his safe. It was close enough to the truth to sound believable. Agent Morrison made a note. We'll need those reports. Already boxed and waiting for you in Daddy's study. I'd spent the morning gathering every piece of evidence I could remember, every detail that had been overlooked in my first life. You'll find some interesting reading about Margaret's gambling addiction and James's insider trading schemes. Her pen stopped moving. Insider trading? James had access to Daddy's business meetings through me. He'd been selling information to competitors for the past 2 years. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot. The SEC might be interested in these bank deposits. Agent Morrison stared at the screen, then at me. How did you... Daddy's investigators were very thorough. I tucked the phone away. They documented everything. James just thought he was being clever. A knock on the door interrupted us. A younger agent stuck his head in. Agent Morrison, the suspects are asking for lawyers. Of course they are. She stood. Miss Helena will need you to stay available for questioning over the next few days. I'm not going anywhere. I rose as well. But I should mention, the debt collectors will be arriving at the house this afternoon. You might want to have someone there to keep the peace. Her eyes sharpened. What? Debt collectors? Richard borrowed against Daddy's estate to cover his losses. Margaret used her expected inheritance as collateral for business loans. Victoria took cash advances on credit cards, planning to pay them back after the will reading. I shrugged. When the inheritance goes to charity instead of them, those debts become immediately due. I called the creditors this morning to inform them of the change in circumstances. Agent Morrison was staring at me with something approaching awe. You orchestrated all of this. I simply let the truth come to light, I corrected. They created their own destruction. I just accelerated the timeline. An hour later, I was sitting in my car outside the police station when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Helena? Dr. Hammond's voice was strained, panicked. We need to talk. I smiled, putting the call on speaker and starting the recording app. Hello, Dr. Hammond. I wondered when you'd call. You don't understand what you've done. There are people involved in this that you don't know about. Dangerous people. You mean your gambling debts? The ones that forced you to take bribes from my family? I kept my voice calm, encouraging him to keep talking. Or are you referring to someone else? Silence. Then, how do you know about... I know about the medical supply theft ring. I know about the prescription fraud. I know about the insurance scams you've been running with Margaret. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. I could hear his breathing becoming laboured. Did you really think Daddy's investigators wouldn't find all of it? Your father is dead. Yes, he is. But his evidence isn't... I pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop, keeping the line open. Tell me, Doctor, who else was involved? Who are these dangerous people you're so afraid of? Another long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Antonio Ricci. My blood ran cold. Ricci was a name I remembered from my father's business dealings. A loan shark who operated on the edges of legitimate finance. If Hammond owed money to Ricci, how much do you owe him? 200,000 plus interest. Hammond's voice cracked. He gave me until tonight to pay. That's why why the plan had to work. So you decided to murder me for money. The words came out flat, emotionless. How much was my life worth, Doctor? What was your cut going to be? It wasn't supposed to be murder. You were supposed to get sick, sign the will, and then recover. The inheritance would have covered everyone's debts and then you decided killing me was easier than healing me. I ended the call and immediately dialed Agent Morrison. Agent Morrison, this is Helena. I just received a very interesting call from Dr. Hammond. You're going to want to hear the recording. 20 minutes later, I was back in the FBI office, watching Agent Morrison's team trace Hammond's location through his cell signal. The doctor had made a fatal mistake. He'd called from a payphone at a truck stop 60 miles north of the city, but he'd kept his cell phone on. We've got units moving to intercept, Agent Morrison reported. But this Antonio Ricci connection opens up a whole new investigation. Good, I said. Because I'm not finished yet. She looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. Miss Helena, you've already exposed a murder conspiracy and multiple fraud schemes. What more could there be? I pulled out a thick manila envelope I'd been carrying all day. The second set of financial records Daddy's investigators found. The ones showing how deep this conspiracy really goes. Agent Morrison opened the envelope and her face went pale. These are bank records showing payments to city officials, judges, hospital administrators. A corruption network that's been operating for 5 years, I confirmed. My family wasn't just trying to steal my inheritance. They were part of something much bigger. And now that their plan has failed, as if summoned by my words, Agent Morrison's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then looked at me with wide eyes. That was the surveillance team at your house. 3 black SUVs just pulled up. Armed men are getting out. I stood up, my heart racing but my mind crystal clear. It looks like Antonio Ricci wants to have a conversation about his missing payment. Agent Morrison was already moving, her team mobilizing around us like a well-oiled machine. We need to get you to a safe house immediately. No. I remained seated, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Take me home. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Helena, there are armed criminals at your house. This isn't a game. You're right. It's not a game. I stood up, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. It's an ending, and I need to be there to see it through. 20 minutes later, we were crouched behind police barriers 2 blocks from my house. The street had been evacuated, FBI snipers positioned on neighbouring rooftops, and Agent Morrison was speaking rapidly into her radio. Through binoculars, I could see the 3 black SUVs parked in my circular driveway like predators claiming territory. Thermal imaging shows 8 individuals inside your house, Agent Morrison reported. They're armed and appear to be searching for something. Or someone, I murmured, watching a figure move past the living room window. They think my family had the money to pay Richie. When they find out the inheritance is gone, they'll come looking for you, she finished grimly. Exactly. I pulled out my phone and showed her a text message I'd received an hour ago. From Antonio Ricci himself. The message was simple. You cost me $200,000. We need to discuss compensation. Agent Morrison read it twice. How did he get your number? Dr. Hammond gave it to him before you arrested him. I'd actually expected this. In my first life, Richie had shown up 3 days after my death, demanding payment from my estate. The timeline was different now, but the outcome would be the same. He thinks I'm just a naive girl who stumbled into something bigger than herself. Aren't you? I smiled, remembering the weight of death, the clarity that came from losing everything once. I'm a naive girl who died and came back very, very angry. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number, but I knew who it was. Answer it, Agent Morrison said, already signalling her tech team to start tracing. Keep him talking. I hit speaker. Hello, Mr. Ricci. Miss Thompson. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of accent. I understand you've had a busy day. Very busy. I've been cleaning house, you might say. A low chuckle. So I've heard. Your family members are currently enjoying federal hospitality. Unfortunate for my business arrangements. Your business arrangement was based on fraud, I said calmly. Dr. Hammond borrowed money he couldn't repay, using my inheritance as collateral he had no right to offer. Nevertheless, a debt was incurred, a debt that must be satisfied. Agent Morrison was making frantic hand signals, but I ignored her. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Ricci? A simple transfer, $200,000 plus interest. Surely a small price for a young woman who just inherited $20 million. About that inheritance, I let my voice trail off innocently. Yes? I burned it. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When Richie spoke again, his cultured tone had vanished. What did you say? I burned the will. All $20 million went to charity this morning. I don't have your money, Mr. Ricci. In fact, I don't have any money. You're lying? Check with the law firm of Morrison, Beck and Associates. The will was executed at 9 a.m. this day. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is now $20 million richer, and I am officially broke. Another long silence. Through the binoculars, I could see increased movement in the house. Someone was shouting. This is unacceptable, Richie said finally. Dr. Hammond assured me, Dr. Hammond was a gambling addict who made promises he couldn't keep. I interrupted. Just like my family. Just like everyone else who thought they could steal from my father and get away with it. Then, we have a problem, Miss Thompson. No, Mr. Ricci. You have a problem. I have a solution. Agent Morrison was staring at me with wide eyes. The tech team was frantically tracing the call, but I could see from their expressions they weren't having much luck. What solution? Richie's voice was dangerously quiet. Dr. Hammond kept records of everything. Every bribe, every fraudulent prescription, every illegal transaction, including his payments to you. I paused for effect. The FBI now has those records. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you, your operation is blown, Mr. Ricci. The corruption network my family was part of, it's unravelling as we speak. City officials are being arrested, judges are being investigated, and your loan shark business is about to become very, very public. Through the binoculars, I saw men emerging from my house, moving quickly toward their vehicles. Agent Morrison was barking orders into her radio. You've made a very dangerous enemy today, Richie said. I've made several dangerous enemies today, I replied cheerfully. But here's the thing about dangerous enemies. They're only dangerous when you're afraid of them. And you're not afraid. I thought about the taste of bitter almonds, the feeling of my heart stopping, the helpless terror of dying while the people I loved celebrated. Mr. Ricci, I've already died once. What exactly do you think you can threaten me with that's worse than what I've already experienced? The call ended abruptly. Through the binoculars, I watched the black SUVs tear out of my driveway, tires screaming against asphalt. FBI vehicles immediately gave chase, sirens wailing. "They're running," Agent Morrison reported. "All units in pursuit." "They'll get away," I said calmly, lowering the binoculars. "How can you be so sure?" "Because Ricci is smart enough to know when a situation is unsalvageable." I handed her the binoculars. "He came here expecting to collect from a wealthy heiress. Instead, he found a broke girl who just handed his entire operation to the FBI. Staying to fight would be stupid, and Antonio Ricci didn't build his empire by being stupid." Agent Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "You planned this whole thing, didn't you? From the moment you woke up this morning?" "From the moment I woke up, period." I started walking back toward the police cars. Every phone call, every revelation, every piece of evidence, it was all designed to bring this network down completely. "But why? Your family tried to kill you, but this corruption network..." "They were just tangentially involved." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Agent Morrison, my father spent the last months of his life trying to expose these people. He hired investigators, gathered evidence, built cases, and they killed him for it." Her eyes widened. "Your father's death wasn't natural. Heart attack induced by digitalist poisoning, just like they planned for me." I smiled grimly. "The only difference is I came back to finish what he started." In the distance, we could hear the sound of approaching sirens. More FBI vehicles, more arrests, more pieces of the network falling into place. "The debt collectors should be arriving at my house soon," I said conversationally, "along with the news crews. It's going to be quite a scene." Agent Morrison shook her head in amazement. "You really thought of everything." "Almost everything." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. There's still one more call to make. The number I dialed belonged to Channel 7 News. Within 30 minutes, news vans were lining the street alongside FBI vehicles, creating a media circus that would have made my father proud. He'd always believed that sunlight was the best disinfectant for corruption. This is Rebecca Martinez reporting live from the Thornfield estate, where federal agents have just concluded a dramatic arrest operation connected to what sources are calling the largest corruption network uncovered in the city's history. I stood behind the police barricade, watching the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. Agent Morrison approached, looking exhausted but victorious. "We caught Ricci's men at the airport," she reported. 3 vehicles, 8 arrests, and enough evidence to put them away for decades. Ricci himself is still in the wind, but we'll find him." "You don't need to," I said, pointing toward the news cameras. "After this broadcast, every law enforcement agency in the country will be looking for him. His face will be on every news channel by tonight." As if summoned by my words, Rebecca Martinez turned toward our position. "I'm now joined by Helena Thompson, the young woman whose courage in exposing this conspiracy has led to today's arrests." I stepped forward, smoothing my hair and putting on the expression of a grieving daughter seeking justice. The cameras rolled as Rebecca thrust her microphone toward me. "Miss Thompson, can you tell us how you discovered your family's involvement in this corruption network?" "My father suspected something was wrong before he died," I said, my voice breaking just slightly. "He hired private investigators and gathered evidence, but he died before he could expose the truth. I found his research after they tried to poison me the same way they poisoned him." The revelation sent a ripple through the crowd of reporters. Rebecca's eyes widened. "You're saying your father was murdered? Digitalis poisoning, made to look like a heart attack. The same method they used on me, except I survived. I let tears gather in my eyes, not difficult when remembering the betrayal. They wanted to steal his life's work and leave me to die. And the inheritance? Gone to charity, exactly as it should be. My father built his fortune to help people, not to fund corruption. I turned to look directly into the camera. Every dollar is going to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, the homeless shelter, and the animal rescue. The people and causes my father actually cared about. Behind the cameras, I could see a commotion starting. 3 unmarked vans were pulling up to my house, and men in suits were climbing out. Not FBI. These had the look of debt collectors and repo men. Perfect timing. Miss Thompson, Rebecca continued, what message do you have for others who might be victims of similar corruption? That the truth always comes out, I said firmly. No matter how powerful people think they are, no matter how clever their schemes, justice will find them. Sometimes it just needs a little help. The debt collectors had reached my front door and were pounding loudly. Behind them, I could see more vehicles arriving. Tow trucks, moving vans, men with clipboards and legal documents. Rebecca noticed the commotion and gestured for her cameraman to follow. It appears debt collectors are now arriving at the Thompson estate. Miss Thompson, can you explain what's happening? I smiled sadly. My family took out loans against an inheritance they thought they'd steal. When I burned the will and donated everything to charity, those debts became immediately due. They gambled everything on my death and lost. The front door of my house opened, and Victoria stumbled out, flanked by 2 FBI agents in handcuffs. Her perfect hair was dishevelled, her makeup streaked with tears. Behind her came Margaret and Richard, both looking like they'd aged 10 years in a single day. Mrs. Victoria Thompson, one of the debt collectors called out, waving a legal document. We're here to collect on the outstanding balance of $400,000 plus interest and penalties. Victoria's face crumpled. I don't have it. The inheritance is gone. That's not our problem, Ma'am. You used the estate as collateral. The property and all contents are now subject to immediate seizure. I watched with quiet satisfaction as Victoria turned toward the cameras, her face a mask of desperation. Helena, please, we're family. You can't let them take everything. I stepped closer to the microphone, making sure my words would be heard clearly. Victoria, you poisoned me. Margaret, you forged my father's will. Richard, you stole from his business accounts. James betrayed confidential information for money. My voice grew stronger with each accusation. You chose greed over family. You chose money over love. You chose murder over mercy. Victoria collapsed to her knees on the front steps, sobbing. We never meant for it to go this far. You meant to kill me for money, I said flatly. The only thing you didn't mean was getting caught. Margaret was being loaded into an FBI vehicle, but she managed to look back at me with pure hatred. You little witch! You planned this! Somehow you knew... I knew because you told me, I called back. Right before I died the first time. Every word, every detail, every cruel laugh. I remembered it all. Agent Morrison appeared at my elbow. Miss Thompson, we should probably... One more minute, I said quietly. James was being brought out now, and I needed to see this. My cousin, my first love, the man who'd held me while I grieved my father, looked up and met my eyes across the chaos. For a moment, his handsome mask slipped, and I saw genuine remorse there. Helena, he called out, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, I never wanted... You wanted my money more than my life, I interrupted. That's all I need to know about who you really are. The tow trucks were backing up to the luxury cars in the driveway now. Victoria's Mercedes, Richard's Bentley, Margaret's BMW, all being hooked up and hauled away. The moving vans were backing up to the house itself. Rebecca Martinez was practically vibrating with excitement as she reported the scene. In an unprecedented turn of events, we're witnessing the complete financial collapse of what appeared to be one of the city's most prominent families. I turned away from the cameras and walked toward Agent Morrison's car. Behind me, I could hear Victoria still pleading, Margaret still cursing, Richard hyperventilating as the reality of their situation sank in. "Where will you go?" Agent Morrison asked as we drove away. "The house will be seized as part of the debt collection." "I have an apartment downtown," I said, "something my father set up years ago that was never connected to the estate. Small, simple, perfect for starting over." "And then what?" I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror, along with the debt collectors, the FBI agents, the news crews, and the family that had betrayed everything my father stood for. "Then I live," I said simply. "I finish college, maybe, go to law school, fight corruption from the inside, make sure what happened to my father and to me never happens to anyone else." Agent Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "Do you really believe in second chances?" I thought about waking up this morning with impossible knowledge, about the chance to rewrite history, about the weight of carrying death's wisdom in a living heart. "I believe in justice," I said finally, "and sometimes, if we're very lucky, justice looks exactly like revenge." The car turned toward downtown, toward my new life, toward a future where the innocent were protected and the corrupt paid their debts in full. Behind us, my family's empire crumbled to ash, just like the will I'd burned at dawn.